Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss the uncharacteristically swift reaction to massive concern over the new COVID variant that South Africa have been sequencing as the government starts up the red list again. But is it enough? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So before I start, a few people have been asking questions. Phil, looks like you haven't got an arm there. I do have an arm here. Each week when I set up the camera gets taken down a couple of times a week and put up again. It's always in a slightly different position. This arm hides the remote, you see. So I tend to hide it at the back so I don't wave that around. And then it flies out of my hand and then I have to stop the whole thing. So that's there. But anyway, new COVID variant. Up to the Greek letter nu. This is a bit unfortunate, really, because referring to it, people may not know if you're saying new or new. I kind of feel that they should have skipped that one and gone straight to Omicron, but they didn't, never mind. But what do we know so far? Well, like all the other forms of coronavirus, not a lot until it's too late. That's the way it works, isn't it? This one, unlike the others, including the dominant Delta variant in the UK, looks like it might well be resistant to the main vaccines. That is always the worry, isn't it? There's always a worry with any new variant being studied, but the spike protein on this one is sufficiently different to make experts really very worried. In fact, I've seen the phrase more worried than any previous one. The big unknown will be how transmissible is this? When a new variant dominates, it's always because it's more transmissible. It doesn't have to be more deadly. In fact, it helps sometimes, but it's not more deadly. To the individual, ironically, if it's more transmissible, it's more deadly to the population. Naturally, if the new variant is more resistant to the vaccines, that would give it some indirect improved transmissibility on its own. I'll link an article to a scientific journal concern, but let's now consider the political situation here in the UK. First of all, it has not been detected in the UK. At the time of recording this, who knows, in the time it takes to publish it, maybe. I have just seen that I noticed a little while ago it was being sequenced in Belgium. They thought they might have it. It has now been confirmed it has been spotted in Belgium. But regardless, the UK government announced pretty quickly, actually, that South Africa would be added to the red list for travel restrictions. Unfortunately, this did not kick in immediately. People were still travelling directly from the region, not just from South Africa, specifically the region in South Africa where this variant is active, to the UK without any real issues. I thought at least the government aren't dithering for weeks as they did for Delta from India. I suppose a couple of things might have been different this time. Firstly, Boris Johnson doesn't have any visits planned to South Africa in order to pitch for Brexit trade deals. So, if it doesn't clash with his all-important Brexit policies, maybe he's okay doing the right thing. Secondly, I strongly suspect that government advisors sat ministers down, including the Prime Minister. Let's sit down. Listen very, very carefully. Do not let this thing into this country. You thought Delta was bad? Do not let this thing into the country. All of the work that's been achieved will be undone. If the vaccines do not avail us, and we do not yet know that, we don't yet know that, but if that is the case, we are buggered. I mean, it's not even like we've got Delta under control. Now that a few countries elsewhere in Europe are having a surge, the government are once again deciding that international comparisons are all fine. And they're talking about the Europe wave to get ready for what was coming our way this winter anyway. It was already on the increase. We've just approved booster shots for all over 16s. It's still a problem that the government are putting all their eggs into the vaccine basket when we know we need others as well. But they are at least paying attention to that basket, or albeit a little bit more slowly. But to hear that people came in from a part of South Africa affected by new without having to quarantine, when we also consider that there was an international rugby match between England and South Africa in London recently, when the government's restrictions do finally kick in, and assuming that there are not stupid loopholes as there have been in the past, then it may still be a case of shutting the stable door after the horse has bolted. Because there's something else to consider as well. There's no reason to suppose that this variant originated in South Africa. South Africa is an advanced nation that is sequencing strains. However, there are plenty of African neighbours who are not that advanced. It could easily have originated somewhere else. And it's just that it's been picked up in South Africa and Botswana, as it happens, as countries with the facilities to sequence the virus. Even if we are getting away with still letting people from South Africa for a few more days, how do we know it won't just enter the country from some other likely place? So, there have been other countries added to the list, but is it enough? I'm not sure. Again, assuming it's not already too late. But given that, even when the government decided to act, they did not robustly do enough. That's what worries me. There are already some countries that have put measures in place in order to severely limit the chances of letting new carriers into their countries. Not just travel restrictions, tests before being allowed to go on their way. We're just applying the restriction, maybe, in a few days, without the other measures, unless they kick in later as well. And I want to think about something, little thought. So let's imagine that someone has arrived in the UK from South Africa, as several hundred did yesterday. You are infected, this person is infected with the new variant. They're not aware. There's no symptoms that are ringing warning bells. They've got through to London, no quarantine. They're now travelling to whichever part of the country they're headed to. They're in taxis. They're going into shops. There's no face masks, because in England they're not required. Now, think about the possibility that there are several people in the country so infected. Then think that this infection is going to spread through the British population, because it's going to be passed from person to person who's also not wearing face masks. What's going to stop it? With no serious mitigations in place. Some people are wearing face masks, but it's not compulsory. We've got the media keeps trying to downplay the impact of COVID. Most people aren't probably aware that we've had over 1,000 people a week dying from it for months now. The weather is cold. People are going to be spending more time in indoor locations. Poor ventilation helps the spread of the virus as well. We don't know that we're heading for this variant becoming dominant in this country. But if there's a chance of it, we're certainly not doing anywhere near enough to stop it. Apparently, the South African government said that the UK government had acted too quickly. Frankly, after the disaster over Delta, if not letting the original form into the country in early 2020, when, I repeat, we are a pitting island, I would not blame the government at all for acting very quickly, even too quickly, and then pulling back if it turned out to be too much. I would rather overreact than underreact in this case. I just wish that it wasn't just a case of swift action, but also the right action. Like going back to the concern of transmissibility, and like I say, we don't know anything yet. I don't know anything yet. But I did see talk that South Africa was at a very low level, and then it has increased rapidly over the last fortnight. They're talking, about a very high rate of transmission. Now, it's not proof, of course, but it is indicative of a variant that is highly transmissible. That has to be the real frightener. Because if it's anywhere near as transmissible as Delta, doesn't have to be more, just comparable, but it's also able to evade the vaccine much more easily, we are in for a very bad winter. It's just as well our booster program started to catch up because, a month or so ago, that was looking quite bad. It has actually powered up recently. The world has essentially failed here as well. It's not just our government. Too many countries fail to get vaccines out to poorer countries. We should have allowed anyone with the facilities to manufacture and distribute it to do so. To hell with the licensing. Compensate the companies later if you want. But the priority should have been vaccinating the world. When you hear that we are destroying doses of vaccine that we held on to and other countries held on to but didn't use when it could have been sent abroad before it reached the expiry date, it just makes you want to palm your face into last week. Why are we putting corporate interests ahead of... It's self-defeating. It's not even a moral issue for poor buggers around the world. This is going to hurt us. That decision, or lack of decision, is going to bite us on the arse. We have collectively failed to take reduction of transmission seriously throughout Europe. It's not just in the UK. We just happen to be basically the worst performer. The Asian countries must be looking at us in despair. Last year, Japan, a country with double our population, had suffered, and much more densely populated, had suffered 16,000 deaths. That was so bad that their Prime Minister resigned. Our death toll is way worse. It's now nearly 150,000 deaths, and the same Prime Minister is still very much in place. And If he is eventually forced to resign, it won't be the COVID death toll that does it. Not if it gets to 250,000. So, as with the previous COVID cock-ups from this government, obviously we'll just have to wait and see now. Are we going to dodge this bullet? If not, I shudder to think how many this is going to kill, without even considering the cases of long COVID that will be stoking up for the future. But this government don't care about that, someone else's problem. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button if you'd like to support the channel further. Please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.